Today I'm going to use this topic of how and why did wild mammals disappear from North China to introduce some of the bigger themes of my research. So to begin, I'm just going to say where North China is. Oh, that didn't change. Oh, it did change. OK. So North China is essentially the Yellow River, the middle and lower Yellow River Valley. And as you can see, it's very densely populated. And in fact, it's been one of the most densely populated parts of the world for the past few thousand years. And so that's sort of a key to the question. So this is the region that I'm talking about. OK. So a few thousand years ago, all of these animals were native to the region. And this is based on zooarchaeological research I've done with Kate Brunson, who's somewhere here. And essentially, there were lots of large animals and lots of small animals, and almost none of them will be encountered if you go to the lowlands of China now. So for example, there were aurochs, which are the ancestors of wild cattle. There were wild water buffalo, which are not the ancestors of domesticated water buffalo. Both of those species are extinct. There were Sumatran rhinos, which in fact are native to the entire region from Sumatra to North China. Several species of deer, lions, or not lions, tigers, leopards, bears, wolves, and so on. So there were quite a variety of animals at the time. All of these animals are gone from the lowlands of North China, and almost all of them are entirely gone, even from the high mountain areas. But it's not just the large animals. Even squirrels are found only in high mountains now in China. So there are 9 species of squirrels native to North China, and you won't see any of them in any, unless you climb up very high mountain and go to a nature reserve. And this explains why Chinese tourists are often taking pictures of squirrels, because for them, squirrels are exotic animals, despite the fact that there are more species of squirrels where they come from than there are here. OK. So this process is often described as habitat loss. Habitat loss is sort of considered to be a driving factor. But in fact, it's more useful to understand this process as the side effects of the humans creating their own habitats with domesticated plants and animals. So in a sense, habitat loss is a negative concept, whereas what I want to say is what's really going on is that humans are creating habitat for themselves. So each domesticated species that humans get improves their ability to replace wild ecosystems with anthropogenic ones. And that's the sort of the core of the story I'm talking about here. So I'm going to review the history of, very briefly, the history of domesticated plants and animals in China to talk about how this actually happened. So I'll just give a few examples, first of all. So farm crops, vegetables, grains, and so on, allow people to cultivate flat land. Nut, fruit, and timber trees allowed people to replace natural forests on slopes. And then grazing animals allow people to monopolize arid and alpine grasslands. So the point here is that each of these different types of crops or animals allow people to take over a different ecosystem. And then by the end, by now, the only places that people have not found particularly useful are very high mountains. And so those are the only places where wild mammals still exist. OK. So just to briefly review the history of domestication, millets, dogs, and pigs were domesticated over 8,000 years ago in North China. Peaches, chestnuts, soybeans, and many vegetables were also domesticated, but this is sort of an ongoing field, so nobody actually knows when most of these things were domesticated. But a whole variety of other animals and plants were domesticated, but we don't know exactly when. Between 5,000 and 3,000 years ago, domesticated wheat, cattle, sheep, goats arrived from Western Asia. And then over the subsequent millennia, things like walnuts, cotton, apples, and many other things followed. So the point is that the repertoire of domesticated species was building up over time, and each new species gave humans a new ability to take over another part of the landscape. And then after 1492, New World crops like maize and sweet potatoes allowed people to colonize mountainous regions with poor soils. And so this played a huge role in the colonization of the uplands of China, because they didn't have crops that could grow in really terrible soils. And then in the last 5 centuries or so, people have been able to move into the highlands, cut down the forests, and grow things like corn. OK. So now all of China, this is not just North China, has 1.4 billion humans, almost 500 million pigs, almost 200 million sheep, and so on. And in fact, these are the highest figures of each one of these animals. So China not only has the most humans, it also has the most pigs, the most sheep, the most goats, the most cattle, and also the most chickens. So this sort of general story that I'm telling here is wild mammals were replaced with domesticated mammals and crops, and that is actually a story that can be sort of extended across the earth. So the broader argument I'm making here is that the history of North China provides us with a glimpse into the potential future of humans on Earth. In a sense, the direction we're going now towards more intensification, more people, fewer and fewer wild habitats is in fact something that we already know what the outcome is by looking at places like North China. So that's my argument. Are there any questions?